top of guy and you're just, Jesus. Chris is using the air compressor. Hey, how's it going, guys? FrSky here. And I'm just doing my follow-up video on the QX7. So this is actually the second QX7 that we got in. As the first one, it bricked or something. I had it for like 2 days, and then I took it down to the garage on a Friday night to fly with it, and it just wouldn't power on. I think it was a firmware issue because, you know, the firmware for the X7 is still in beta. So when we got the second one, I updated the firmware to the most current, and I updated the SD card contents, and so far I've got about 100 packs in it, and it's been bulletproof. These silicone caps, I just got these on Amazon. They're 1/8 inch inner diameter, and I added some pistol grip to the top just because the back half of the case is slick, and that was like the only place where I didn't feel like I had like a really positive grip. So to reiterate, the reason why I've basically switched to this radio is for these back grips. You know, you can just kind of latch your fingers on there, and when you're racing, you know, say you're racing on a small track and you're doing like a ton of laps, you start to get tense, and when you get tense, you start to kind of like scrunch down in your chair and you're gripping your radio harder. And you know, with another radio, you start gripping harder, and there's not really anything to hold on to. Your fingers just kind of have freedom to move around. But with the X7, your fingers can't go anywhere. I mean, you know, if you start tensing up on the radio, your hands aren't going to change position. So that to me is like key. As far as gimbal feel, like when I think of gimbal feel, all I'm thinking of is spring tension. You know, all these radios, I've got the DX8 here, I've got an X9, I've got an Evo. All of these radios, the gimbals basically feel the same, they just have different levels of spring tension. If I took out the springs of all these radios and moved the gimbals around, they would all feel identical. So what I did on the X7 was I got the FrSky heavy-duty gimbal springs from Aloft, and I set them to about half tension. And versus full tension on the stock springs, they're still a good bit stiffer. I feel like I have more control. So like versus like something like the Evo where the gimbals are really loose, even all the way tight, that makes me feel like something's wrong with my tune. I don't know if you can hear the quads in the background. Zero and Hazak are outside racing. So yeah, just compared to some other radios, we've got the DX8 here. This is probably the second system I fly with the most. And it's only because when we're testing the Riot Pro, so I do like almost all of the test flying here at the Rest UAV. So if we need to check like QC issues or firmware updates, the guys will hand me a Riot and I'll go outside and fly it. And the reason why we use Spectrum is because we built in a Spectrum plug into the side of the flight controller. So that allows us to test without tinning the solder pad. So I can QC test a Riot, and then we can still package it up and ship it. So I fly with the DX8 almost every day. And it's an okay system. The radio it's high quality. It's good construction. It's got an okay feel. The gimbals are kind of stiff. They're stiffer than a Tyrannus with stock springs. My only gripe about it is that the throttle doesn't ratchet. I know that's like just, you know, pure preference. I prefer ratcheting. But the throttle on the DX8 is sticky. It's smooth, but I can feel the plastic on the back of the gimbal running against that tension bar. And so sometimes when I'm flying line of sight and I go to land, I can't land smoothly because it kind of gets stuck at the bottom. But other than that, it's a nice feeling radio. It looks nice. I don't think it's as, you know, for $300. This is a $300 radio. I think it's not as powerful as the X7 at $110 as far as what you can do with it. The menu for me is not as intuitive. Like I like to arm with the right shoulder switch, And I've set this switch up on this system, on this radio, like 5 different times. But, you know, this thing gets passed around. And so somebody else will take it and like switch a model or delete the model and create a new one. And then the ARM switch is different. And I'll completely forget how to like reassign it. Just because I can't just like go through the menu and like it's not, for me, it's not straightforward on how to assign that switch. And, you know, the power and the programming with OpenTX now, if you have a Immersion RC Tramp VTX or a TBS Unify VTX, there's a Lewis script now for the Tyrannus where you can change your VTX channels right on the screen. I mean, that's huge. You know, if you don't have an OSD and you can't do it through your OSD, then and you have a Unify, then you have to like count the LED lights to like change channels. It's a pain in the butt. So once that Lewis script came out, like, you know, we tested it, and it, you know, you can just change channels right on the screen. I like just started ordering more Unifies for like my quads and Sorel's quads, because, you know, that's like for racing, that's a game changer. X9 is still a great system. More switches. The biggest difference between the X9 and the X7 is the case. And one thing I noticed about the X7 is the case is thicker with the grips. I let Zero fly with this, and it might be too big for his hands because, you know, he's 13. So I'll have to let him try it again a few more times to see if he likes it or not. Because I want him to use, the best gear that's available, just so he has, you know, the best chance or whatever. But if it ends up not working out for his hands, then he can just stick with his X9. That's not a huge deal. The Evo. I'm sorry if we're like friends, we're bros, and you fly an Evo. I'm sorry, but I cannot recommend this system. I mean, this has just been a nightmare for me. I ordered one. You know, we ordered them in at the shop, and mine was broken out of the box. Hazak had to go in and like resolder a connector just to get it working out of the box. And then I bought a second one because when I first got it, you know, the whole game controller thing was really novel. And I was like, oh, this is really neat. So I ordered a second one for Zero. And with his, you turn it on and then you swipe over to the trim tab and the trims aren't zeroed. So you have to like twist the case to zero the trims almost every time you turn it on. And the other thing about the Evo system, you know, it's using, each system obviously uses its own protocol, but with the Evo, you know, I noticed there's less range, at least with the included receiver, there's less range. And also I think there might be an issue with the protocol. And I say that because I was flying with this in the parking garage one night with a 4-inch Gatekeeper, which is a bottom mount quad, 400 grams. Should be really maneuverable, should be really agile. And with this radio, it wasn't. Like, I felt like when I was flying through the S-turn, I had to really work to transition from left to right, which to me it was really strange, and I knew it felt off. You know, like, after you do so many laps with so many different quads, when something is off, you just know. So a couple of days later, I switched out the Evo system on that 4-inch quad to an X4R for the Tyrannus, and boom, just like that, all the responsiveness I was expecting was there. So I think, at least with my gear and the receivers I'm using, I think there's an issue with the protocol. So this now sits on the shelf next to my X9D. So yeah, that about sums it up. $110. You have to do some work to program it. You have to get your own SD card to load the SD card contents on it. You know, my buddy Terrence is brand new to the hobby, and he bought one of these and he got it set up over the course of a few hours. You know, I had to help him here and there. But, you know, if a complete beginner can set one of these up, then pretty much anyone can set one of these up. It's not, don't be intimidated by OpenTX University. It's not, there's tons of help out there. There's tons of information on YouTube. That's one of the great things about OpenTX and open source in general. It feels solid. It doesn't twist. The switches are all nice. Yeah, like I said, regardless of the price point, this is my recommended radio, and this is what I'll fly with from now on. And yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys.